He married a disabled black woman, but what he discovered on their wedding night would change everything. The ballroom shimmered beneath crystal chandeliers, laughter and music swirling around the newlyweds as they moved, or rather, glided, through the dance floor. David stood tall in a custom cream tuxedo, his hand gently resting on the shoulder of his bride, who sat poised in her wheelchair like royalty. Her white satin gown flowed over the wheels like liquid silk, and a crystal tiara sparkled just beneath her veil. She was radiant, her smile so warm it could melt marble. To many, they seemed like opposites, a contradiction. A wealthy white tech entrepreneur and a disabled black woman? But to David, was his equal in every way. Brilliant, beautiful, and unapologetically powerful. Their story had never fit into neat boxes. David, 33, had built several successful startups and was well known in the innovation space. 31, was a passionate disability rights advocate, a fierce speaker, and a published expert in accessible design. They'd met at a tech and inclusion conference, both speaking on separate panels. David couldn't recall a word from the other presenters. But he remembered everything. The way she dismantled a CEO's lazy assumptions with sharp data and sharper grace. The way her voice filled the room, commanding without rising. They shook hands afterward, and her eyes held his a second longer than expected. One coffee turned into 5 hours of laughter, debate, and personal confessions. But dating wasn't easy. People stared, some with curiosity, others with judgment. Strangers often assumed he was her brother or her nurse. Some hinted it was a statement relationship. Even David's colleagues had questions hidden behind politeness. Is she okay being out this late? Do you think she wants kids? And his own mother, gently but clearly asked, She's lovely, dear. But are you sure you're ready for a life like this? But David didn't see a burden. He saw a woman who needed no saving. Only someone who truly saw her. Didn't want pity. She wanted partnership. And slowly, carefully, she let her walls fall. For the first time in years, she believed this love was real. That David wasn't fascinated by her disability. He was captivated by her. Their wedding was a quiet rebellion against tradition. A blend of cultures, styles, and spirits. She wore her mother's vintage earrings. He wore beaded cufflinks gifted by her father. Friends flew in from every continent to witness the kind of love that doesn't demand a spotlight, yet glows all on its own. But beneath Umla's glowing smile was a truth. One she had carried for 2 years. One she hadn't shared. Now, inside the candlelit honeymoon suite, the air thick with rose petals and music humming from the speaker in the corner, it was time. David wheeled her in, his eyes soft with wonder. He poured champagne, then sat beside her as if the whole world had paused just for them. Umla looked at him, her fingers clutching her gown. David, she whispered, her voice tender. Can we sit for a moment? He nodded instantly. There's something I need to tell you, she began, not with fear, but certainty. I didn't keep this from you out of shame. I just needed to be sure of who you were. Not the public man. The private one. The one who shows up when no one's watching. David's heart thudded, but he didn't speak. You know I had a spinal cord injury, she continued. That's true. But what I didn't tell you is, I wasn't born like this. It wasn't an accident either. It was domestic abuse. The room fell still. My ex, she said, her voice steady. He pushed me down a flight of stairs. I nearly died. The trauma, it wasn't just physical. It took me years to believe I could still be whole, and even longer to believe I could be loved. Tears welled in David's eyes, not out of pity, but awe, and something deeper. Reverence. I wanted you to know this tonight, she finished. Because if we're starting forever, you should know everything. All of me. David reached for her hand, held it like a vow. And I do, he whispered. I was 21 when the doctors told me I'd never walk again, Umla said softly. David sat beside her, attentive, his expression open, steady. For a long time, she continued, they were right. He nodded, silently urging her on. But 2 years ago, I enrolled in an experimental neurorehabilitation trial. They didn't promise miracles, just a chance to try. Slowly, I began to feel things again. First my toes, then my legs. Enough to stand. Enough to walk. Not far. Not without pain. But enough. David's eyes widened. Wait, you can. She lifted a hand gently, stopping him. Yes, she said. I can walk. A little. Not always. Not gracefully. Not without risk or judgment. He was quiet, absorbing her words. I chose not to tell you, explained. Because I've had men change after they found out. As if being able to walk, even briefly, made me more desirable. Like I was a project with a promising outcome. I needed to know you loved me for who I am now, not for some potential future. David reached for her hand, warm and steady. He said, voice rich with emotion. I love your mind, your fire, your heart. If you never stood again, I'd still be the luckiest man alive. Her eyes shimmered. Then she whispered, I'd like to show you something. With practiced strength, she shifted her body and pressed her palms to the mattress. Slowly, she lowered her legs to the floor. Her knees shook. David instinctively started to rise, but she gave a small shake of her head. Stay. And then deliberately, shakily, she stood. The room felt utterly still. Her veil trailed behind her. Her dress caught the candlelight in shimmering waves. One foot forward. Then another. Step by trembling step, walked across the room until she reached David's arms. He didn't speak. He just held her. There was no applause. No gasp. Only awe. David wrapped his arms around her, as if trying to protect her from the entire world. Trembled. Not from weakness, but from the sheer weight of what she had just done. Of what she had just shared. For 2 years, she had carried this truth alone. Tonight she let it go. You didn't have to do this, David murmured, his lips near her ear. I know, she whispered. She pulled back just enough to meet his gaze. But I wanted to. Not to impress you, but to trust you. He smiled, eyes glistening. Then let me say this. Nothing changes. Not my love. Not my heart. Not my choice. A shaky breath escaped her lips. You always say the right thing. He chuckled, brushing a soft curl from her forehead. No, he said. I just mean every word. Gently, he helped her sit again on the edge of the bed. Her legs ached, but her face glowed with something deeper than pride. Peace. You know, she began quietly. People think the hardest part of disability is the physical stuff. The pain. The stairs. The stairs. But for me, it's always been trust. Trusting someone to love all of me. Not just the parts they can fix or carry. David listened, every syllable anchoring itself in his soul. I've met men, she continued. Some were kind. Some curious. Some said the right things, until I said no. But you never treated me like I was broken. You never asked when I'd walk again. You never made the chair the center of our story. David looked down, gently tracing the lines of her palm. Because it never was, he said. She smiled. I needed to be sure. That's why I waited. I didn't want this. She gestured at her legs. To be some prize. I needed to know you loved me. I do, David said. Always have. Always will. And in that candlelit room, surrounded by silence and soft music, love didn't need to be proven anymore. It had already spoken. In every step, every secret, every promise made without words. As I am. Even if nothing ever changes. I do, David replied, his voice steady. With every inch of me. That night, they didn't stay up out of wonder. They stayed up in understanding. They curled up together in the quiet warmth of their honeymoon suite, trading stories, laughing over their slightly mismatched vows, dreaming out loud about future vacations and favorite cities they hadn't yet seen. There was no talk of legs or chairs, only dreams, ridiculous inside jokes, and the kind of conversations that make time feel irrelevant. By morning, sunlight spilled gently across the room. Reached for her wheelchair without hesitation. The action fluid, unburdened. She rolled toward the mirror, adjusted her veil for one last look, then turned to find David watching her from the doorway. Still feel like the luckiest man in the world, she teased. He smiled, leaning on the doorframe. Even more than yesterday. Downstairs, as they rejoined the remaining guests for brunch, a few people noticed had returned to her chair. No one said anything, Well, almost no one. An older woman whispered to her husband with a wistful sigh. He must really love her. She's so lucky. Amla heard it. She leaned toward David, smirking. You think I should tell her I booked this entire hotel for our honeymoon? He laughed under his breath. Nah, let her stay in awe. Weeks later, Amla made a choice. Not for attention, but for visibility. She uploaded a video titled What They Miss When I Stand. It began with her seated in her wheelchair, speaking directly to the camera. This isn't about inspiration, she said calmly. It's about education. Then, halfway through her story, she stood slowly with the help of a cane. She took a few careful, deliberate steps, then returned to her chair. People cheer when I stand, she continued. But they miss the strength it takes to sit in this chair every single day. I'm not stronger because I walk. I'm not more worthy because I can. This chair isn't my weakness, it's my freedom. The video went viral. David watched it all from the background, refusing the spotlight, content to stand quietly beside the woman he adored. When a reporter once asked what it was like being married to such a brave woman, David's answer was simple. She's not brave because she stood. She's brave because she waited until love was safe to do so. Life moved forward as all lives do. There were bright days and heavy ones, therapy appointments and product launches, spontaneous road trips, and vacations that included far too many stairs. But through it all, they clung to honesty and to each other. On their 3rd anniversary, David gifted Amla a leather-bound journal. Inside the first page he'd written, I fell in love with a woman who rolls. I married one who walks. But I will grow old beside the one who moves people, no matter how she gets there. Amla cried when she read it. Not because it was poetic, but because it was true. That evening they danced. Her body resting in his arms, their steps careful, tender. 1 foot at a time. No performances. No surprises. Just the quiet unfolding of a love that had been tested and found unshakable. A love that saw her fully. A love she could finally trust. If you were moved by this story, give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more emotional, dramatic, and unexpected tales. And let us know in the comments. Where in the world are you watching from? We love hearing your stories. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and keep watching.